everybody. Welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records, and for this week's musical adventure on Dat Fury Radio, She Will Knock 3 Times Before You Die by Daniel Glascock. I'm joined by Daniel. What's going on, Daniel?
How you doing?
I'm good, as well as Sam Piper. What's going on, Sam?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to the show. We have a lot of music to cover tonight, so I am just going to fire it up.
Yes.
Daniel,
sorry about
do you
that.
want to... No, this is great. It's wonderful music, and in fact, hey, I'm glad this actually is going to make it to the air. My spouse, Carrie Ann, told me to tell you that she enjoyed the record. We listened to it on a little road trip over this past weekend, and she really enjoyed it. So kudos
Awesome.
from Carrie Ann.
Thank Carrie Ann from me. And she's welcome.
How do you pronounce this? Un bellissimo omicidio.
Yeah, so Un Bellissimo Omicidio is a beautiful murder. And whenever I was working on the whole project, I had envisioned, I don't know, I vacillated between am I gonna try and sneak this in like authentic Italian soundtrack playlists and just go full method actor here and have every single song named in Italian. So each song has its Italian counterpart. But yeah, this is Un Bellissimo Omicidio.
And since you kind of tiptoed up to it, why don't you go ahead and tell us about the kind of overarching concept for this project?
Oh God, where do I start? Well,
it's a soundtrack to a fake movie.
It's a soundtrack to a fake movie. That's the TLDR of it. The long and protracted Brobdingnagian version of it is I wanted to pay homage to my favorite Italian soundtrack makers. That's a long list of folks, but in the last 5 to 10 years, I've gotten pretty deep in the weeds in terms of my love for Euro cult, giallo, poliziotteschi, those styles of movies from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And of course, they worked in sort of a factory style. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie, Berberian Sound Studio, but everybody's union. Every movie was just like, here you go, you're doing this one, you're doing this one, you're doing this one. And so even despite the fact that it was a very structured, kind of by the numbers process for a lot of these movies, like they were churning them out, once a week, if not twice or 3 times a week. Some of these composers were. Despite that, there's a lot of soul and a lot of really beautiful ideas put forward by these composers, and it's really a turning point for film music. I mean, Ennio Morricone was instrumental in changing the way that we perceive film scores. So I wanted to wade out into those waters, and plus it was a good excuse to have like all my different styles of music happening in one setting: electronic music, folk music, psychedelic rock, experimental noise, collage type stuff. And I think it turned out all right.
It turned out awesome. Do you want to talk about Sam's involvement a little bit by way of getting some initial comments from Sam?
Yeah. Well, of course, Sam and I live together. So, and we've been in a band. Our primary project was Hypermortal for many years. So Sam's the go-to guy whenever I need to bounce guitar ideas off of somebody. And of course, it's not too hard to knock on his door and be like, hey, you want to record some stuff? So, but mostly I wanted to get Sam involved because he'd gotten a new jazz guitar, and I thought that would be a fitting texture for some of the more folk elements. And this is the first track that he's on.
It was a fun opportunity to play very different styles than anything I'd recorded before, really, and a lot of like finger picking and playing basically an acoustic guitar, and most of the stuff I've recorded before was loud metal metal music. So it's always I always appreciate being in the position to work on whatever projects my friends are working on. So it's feel pretty fortunate, But it was a lot of fun.
Sam, were you writing your own parts, or did Daniel mostly write the parts and hand them off to you, or a mix maybe?
Everything I played, I wrote. But I mean, he gave me the tracks, so I was just writing something too, like whatever he had at the time, and it was a lot of fun because a lot of the tracks he gave me were presented to me with, hey, I don't know how to finish this, or hey, can we flesh this out? Like, how do we, what do you want to do with this? And I tried to hopefully, do it service and just find something that really fit for each track. But
yeah, generally when I get somebody else involved with the composition, it's usually because I'm like, well, this is kind of getting stale on my end, I feel like. And Sam, since college, I've always liked to go to him because he'll often approach any of, usually it was like folk-based stuff, but he'll always have a different perspective on it. And especially on this next track, Laughing in the Park, he really he added something that I did not foresee, in the first place, but it fit perfectly. And you'll kind of hear his lead up top on here. It's like a and it's kind of just like, oh, like this is better than I ever could have written it.
Yeah, let's listen to a little bit of this. I love this track. This is kind of the point. So I mastered this project, and in my first listen, when I got here, this is kind of when I fell in love with it.
If I may, some of the sequencing structure of this is, well, all of the sequencing structure of this is sort of designed around the plot of the film that I had envisioned. And mostly it's an amalgamation of so many different giallo films. They do become a little formulaic whenever you've watched them, watched 50, 60, 72, 100 of these different movies, and generally they sort of start with like a grabber kill, and then you've got opening credit sequence, which is the main theme, and then like there's something really like shiny, happy, or like subdued that happens right after the main sequence, the main credit sequence. So this one, Laughing in the Park, I envision it as, you just witness this horrific murder and all the names of the people who are making the film and stuff, and then, ha ha ha, oh, carefree.
There's a swimming pool topless scene generally or something right afterwards.
Yeah, you'll sometimes have the funk cue right after that, and it's like, oh, here's some skin. Time for the skin part of the movie. Keep everybody invested after reading all those words. And that's kind of what the next track is, fooling around, but getting ahead of myself here.
Well, while we get there, so I guess maybe that kind of starts to answer the next question I was going to ask, which is just how did you generate this much raw material? There's 20 tracks, and they're dense. I mean, they're not like little ambient things or whatever. Like each track has sections and solos and themes and variations, and there's a lot of material packed in here.
Yeah, I guess, building blocks. I had a lot of clear motifs in mind, and so I'd find different ways to express those motifs, slow down the piano part. Like the first two songs that we listened to, they pretty much contain every motif that you're going to hear throughout the rest of the album, whether it be from the piano line that starts out the first track or the main melody line in the main theme. Those get interpolated and reiterated all throughout the album. But it was a multi-folding thing because the first tracks that I did were the folk tracks. So Laughing in the Park, Reflections in the Cafe Windows, Paranoia, Paranormal. Those are all kind of the first skeleton tracks of it, as well as A Beautiful Murder. And so I started making the folk songs, and then I had multiple recording setups on top of that. So I got the crew back here, these synthesizers and stuff. Got a Moog Opus 3 and a Prophet. But upstairs, I had a church organ that I hooked up to tape machine and some very old effects, old flanger and phaser. And that made its own layer on top of everything. And I recorded everything in sequence. So, or not exactly in sequence, but I recorded everything in one giant session. And so, if I found a sound that I felt was really useful and I could use it to pervade another section of the album, I'd go back 30 minutes with that same patch. So you're going to hear a lot of intertwining instrumentation all throughout. It's all just me what am I, as an orchestrator, what am I working with? I'm working with a finite amount of instruments. I need to maximize this, and also it will make things more coherent whenever I've got, a set of players to work with.
And it kind of has the effect of, I don't know anything about Italian film, but it kind of has the effect of mimicking that production line.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were just, if they found a sound, they were just banging out as much as they could with it, right?
Yeah, you'll hear that in the best soundtracks from the time. Sort of these key elements, the most obvious thing is Ennio Morricone with his spaghetti western style stuff. Mouth harp. There's mouth harp on like every other track. There's a nylon classical guitar on every other track. You know, piano on every other track. But like on the weirder soundtracks, like Bruno Nicolai's All the Colors of the Dark, that one's got a lot of chorus vocals and sitar on every other track. So it's like every time you choose a specific piece of exotic instrumentation, it adds to the personality of that soundtrack. And, you know, I'm always like a kitchen sink guy. I'm going to have everything thrown in on there, either to the, you know, detriment or the benefit of the personality of the album. But I think I reached a good balance here with, like, my cutoff point was like, all of this stuff should have been available within the studio system by 1978, because I wanted to make a late era giallo. You know, the golden era of giallo is kind of like the beginning of the 70s into the mid 70s, and then it kind of declines as slasher films and Polizio Tesci take off, and everything gets more lurid. There's more brutality. There's more sexuality, and there's more subversions of the giallo tropes going on in the late 70s. And I wanted this to be kind of like a meeting of the, you got the sort of like burgeoning 60s sound, which is a lot of drum machines and very early drum machines and organ work and bucolic folk sort of sounds. And then as you transition through the 70s into the 80s, you got a lot more synthesis going on, a lot of more funk stuff going on. So, I'm just like blending the eras and trying to sort of set it in that period in like around 1978, 1979. Somebody back then could have John Carpentered this thing together.
I have a couple questions in mind, but with what we're listening to right now, it's a perfect chance to ask, like, this reminds me of nothing else in your catalog really except for Candy Onions of the Forest. And you also, this is your first release under your own, just your name. So do you want to comment on either of those two things?
Sure, yeah. Well, all the acoustic stuff was written the same way that the Candy Onions material was. I mean, just on a nylon string guitar. But I kind of wanted this to be my first solo me thing because it's finally all of the lessons I've learned from years and years and years. I don't have to have an artistic moniker for it. This is all of my different ideas and projects blended into one, and I can safely say, maybe for the first time, this is me. This is actually me, not just some project, some iteration of my abilities. This is I threw everything in on this one. So I took a little pride in that.
Yeah, for sure. Well earned. Sam, how did you find recording acoustic? Because it's quite different than recording electric.
Yeah, I think we recorded the room, right? Didn't you have like a room mic as well as the direct in? We just did that in the living room. Overall, it was actually a little more. It was so much quieter than most of the guitar that I usually record. So I felt like, just in terms of like physically, like playing very hard. Just to have it come through clearly. But yeah, it was. Other than that, I mean, it was, it's recording guitars is the easiest part.
It's the setup and the sound checking and
getting the ground. We seriously had to hook up a wire to the hardware on my guitar and then tape a piece of aluminum foil to my skin. And then put the other wire. Where was the other wire connected to the
headphone?
On the headphones.
Headphone out
to chase like a ground loop that we were geting.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
It must have been just something with because he's got like piezo pickup, or no, it's not piezo. It's supposed to be humbuckers.
They're humbuckers.
It's like a Godin jazz guitar. Yeah. And I was like, why can we not get this ground to go away? And then we just taped some aluminum foil to say.
So I was at the hospital. I had like tape on me and wires.
But we got it to your whole rig to.
Yeah.
So Sam's biorhythms are captured on some of these tracks. You gotta. I don't know, Howie, you might know more about that than than either of us do. I mean, with grounding and. Have you ever had to do that?
I've never done anything like that. No, that sounds amazing. And like even just figuring out that that's what you needed to do sounds amazing. I thought you were asking about biorhythms. It's like, I don't know that much about biorhythms, but like oddly enough, and we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but I've had phases of my life where I'm kind of obsessed with Lifehouse by Pete Townshend, the failed follow-up to Tommy that I find just fascinating. And I've actually been on a Lifehouse kick for like the last week. And part of that whole concept was like taking biosignatures from a live audience, feeding them into synthesizers and computers, and assembling that into music. So there's an odd parallel there.
Huh.
I was kind of asking Sam about like acoustic recording, and I guess Sam, you have like much better technique than I do, but I struggle with finger noise on acoustics, so I don't know if you have any
you
tips
and me
on
both,
finger
brother.
noise.
No, I that's one of the things I've been struggling with for years is just like making noise. You know, your hand will be resting on the strings, you're recording, so you're sweating. As soon as you move your hand off, it makes noise. Everything you do makes noise. Yeah. So I just try to be as careful as possible. I mean, usually before we record, I've played something 100 times, you know, just to make sure that I'm not like buzzing, that I'm fretting correctly, and but the other thing is that with the Godin, with the I guess I'll call it an acoustic guitar, even though it has pickups in it, but it was really quiet and kind of not a very bright tone, so it didn't pick up a lot of noise that you would get from, like, you know, playing like a Fender or something, you know, a Strat or something.
Yeah, we did compress it pretty. Most of the recording of Sam's guitar was, we ran it into a little SP compressor by Exotic into his Sovtech, and then we were trying to experiment with an older amp, but Sovtech's old enough, you know. It's got a really good tone to it. It's just, the Godin is a very dark guitar, and we were trying to get the most brightness out of it so it would cut through and be like the lead thing. But it sounded a lot like a typical jazz guitar, you know, very, very thumpy and rounded off in the transients. So that was kind of a struggle, but it's like, I imagine that kind of troubleshooting is the same problem people have had since time immemorial with recording electroacoustic instruments.
Well, changing the strings helped quite a bit, completely changing the gauge of strings. I was using pretty heavy strings, which were darker, more prone to fret noise because they were kind of difficult to fret cleanly. I mean, they were pretty heavy strings. And then I was actually down at Richards and you know, shout out Brad McKellop. Shout out Brad McKellop was like, hey, you know, I was like telling him recording, told him the guitar I was using, and he was like, you know, I love using these on my jazz guitar. Like, some light string, they were much lighter than any strings that I'd been using, and I put them on. They sounded incredible. Suddenly I had more brightness, way easier to play, way more just like playability increased, for sure, but just way better tone, clarity. So that guy knows what he's talking about too, but that helped quite a bit, I think.
Nice. Ad rates on Dat Fury Radio are extremely affordable if Richards wants to reach out via the contact link at mrfuriousrecords.bandcamp.com. We have heard some amazing Travis drumming that we haven't commented on yet. Does someone want to speak to Travis's role in all of this? Or both of you?
I mean, Sam could probably talk about the noise of it while we were doing it, because I I didn't really mention it ahead of time, but we recorded, I mean, probably like 85% of this album upstairs in the living room. We have our normal living room, which is like big open space, but then where the dinner table is supposed to be, we made this sort of little carpeted study with a bookshelf and a more cushiony seat and stuff. And I thought, like, this is the spot in the house that's going to be the best for getting acoustic sounds in general. So all of the strings, auto harp, guitar, sitar, all these things were done there. And then I'm like, this is probably the best spot for drums that we're going to get in the house too, because the basement's a big, tile and concrete box with not a whole lot of sound dampening, and I really wanted him to go for it. So we converted the study into a drum room, and I kind of had with Travis, I'm like, I want you to kind of pare it down, one tom, one snare kick, one tom, and some ride cymbals and hat, because we're like trying to conserve space and stuff here, but also like I wanted to experiment with Glenn John's 2-mic setup, so I didn't even have a kick recording with it. It's just the 2 condenser mics, one up top and one back behind the floor tom towards the hi-hat, and we played with that a lot. But then Travis rented out some congas, as you'll probably hear on various tracks here, because we wanted a little more exotic playing on here to add to it. He's always made projects that I do, way better with his drumming. He's very, very critical of himself, but we'd go through like 5, 6, 7 takes tops of any of these songs, and he'd always be like, "Oh, I could do that better. And I'm like, "No, you don't need to." Like, going back to like the factory mentality of like, we got to get this done. It's like, it's not that time was of the essence. It's just I wanted the immediacy of like, you're a session musician. You only got so many chances to get this right before you get fired and somebody replaces you. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I'm going to fire Travis, but it was like I wanted that urge, that rush to kind of filter into the way things are. And I think, he did a fantastic job, especially on the more aggressive tracks. He came up with a lot of really good parts, and then we spitball. I kind of want it to sound like sort of Motown-y here, and I kind of want it to sound more like splashy and, that Tame Impala guy. You mentioned his name the last time I talked to you about it, but I don't know his name. But he does the really like tube compressed, slam to tape drum sounds. Mm-hmm. Wanted to get that sort of feeling of it, because I was using a tube compressor, so why the hell not?
And Travis is definitely a perfectionist, especially when it comes to recording, and he's an incredible dude, incredible drummer. But yeah, I mean, I remember being on the other side of the wall recording, and like in pretty much every take sounded awesome, and he's like, well, I flubbed this one hit, this one cymbal or this one tom, it's like I flubbed this one hit in the track, and it's like, gotta redo it. It's like no one can tell, but
no
sometimes
punches.
it's enough. Sometimes it's enough that he can tell, and that's what matters.
Travis's first take is tighter than a lot of drummers' best take, including mine.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I get there is that push and pull of like holding ourselves to a really high standard and wanting to do the best we can, but also capturing that energy and being spontaneous and all of that.
Well, I'm glad he did too, because it makes the mixing and editing process so much faster when I don't have to deal with like comping 7 different takes together. That was kind of like another express goal of this whole thing, was like, I'm not going to be sitting here and sifting through 20 different takes, just to get the exact perfect take. I needed a little bit of the push and pull of imperfection. And I needed all the help I could get when it came to mixing and editing, because such a long this is probably the longest album I've done in years. So 69 minutes, 70 minutes. That's
nice.
You gotta keep things simpler if you're going to be going for that kind of longevity there,
And all in one session too, one computer session.
I eventually split it up so I could mix it a little bit more in depth, but yeah, all the recording was all in one session. So,
well, we have a lot more music coming up on next week's show, but for now, listeners, you can go to lovecraft.bandcamp.com and check out She Will Knock 3 Times Before You Die, stream it free, or we highly recommend a purchase. I believe, we pay what you want here?
Yes.
Pay what you want on the digital. A very nice compact disc is available for $10, so it's available as well. Daniel and Sam will be back. We'll listen to the rest of the record next week. Guys, anything else I need to mention before we break?
Nope. I'm sure we'll cover it on the next one.
Cool. Well, listeners, we'll catch you next week on Dat Fury Radio.